Hello.
The thing, did you use the right? Hold on.
No, I didn't. I realized when I was playing us, I didn't use the right thing. I could do that now, but I feel like people would know that we're already on.
30 seconds in, someone would have noticed to hit the unmute button so
Yes.
that you could actually do this, right? And I'm sure I've made notes. I did make notes, Nick.
You did make notes. They're great notes. I'm looking at them.
All right, are you?
Do you want to introduce the episode or should I?
You do it. You do it so well.
Oh, wow. You're so loud.
Am I loud? Am I
very
loud?
No, you were loud. You were loud in my ear. Now you're not loud. Your gain. We're not talking about your weight gain. Is that a sensitive topic? Is that a compliant topic?
It's a non-compliant topic.
Fair enough. With that, we're on episode 10 of SCI Fridays. Welcome to how to pilot your non-compliant endpoints.
Ooh. Are you going to read the next one? I only do the one after the jingle.
Well, I want to do the jingle. I might hit the right button for that.
Do you want to do the intro after the jingle? Because that's my intro, right?
Right. I think you should do the intro.
I'm very lost, Nick.
It's okay. It's Friday. It's a live show on a Friday. And these things happen.
How do you pilot the MEM or MEM for some of them airways so that you build a framework to ensure that your devices are not only technically compliant, technically compliant, but GRC compliant as well?
Roll the jingle.
Welcome to SCI Fridays, your portal into security, compliance, identity management, and you.
Me.
Well,
I'm included in the and you, right?
You are, Nick. Welcome to SCI Fridays.
Thank you.
You are part of the you and you. If you are new to the channel, we talk about all things that get us excited, scared, dismayed, fearful. Do we get fearful?
We sometimes get uncomfortable, but not officially fearful, no.
Okay, so fearless, because we're fearless, right? And dismayed, but mostly excited about cloud security and governance. So pull up a chair, grab a coffee, tea, whiskey, wherever you are in the world, and come spend some time with us. And normally at this time of the show, we have a Satya statement, because this is mostly a Microsoft show about security, compliance, and identity management. And in today's show, we're talking about learning to fly. Funnily, we were talking about pilot, right? Learning to fly is not pretty, but flying is. What do you think that means?
You know, it's that whole thing of fear of change. We like to be in the change, but we don't like to actually get into the change. So that can be a little bit of something that we need to learn to manage, but it's okay.
It's like configuring your shift left for your seam is not pretty, but once it's running, it is. Makes sense?
Once you are doing something and it's producing some kind of value, like being in the air, not dying while you're in the air, that's good. We like not dying while we're in the air. So once you've got something in your seam and your seam is producing value, then we're happy. I think where we are generally, it's been a long week. I think for our viewers as well, it's been a long week.
Year.
Yes, it's February. It's been a long year. And I think we are getting back into the swing of everything at a mad pace. Don't you think, Al?
I think what COVID did was we got to work from home, and yes, we might have been in meetings all the time, but we had that comfort. We didn't have to physically travel for 2 hours at a time, and we didn't have that. Coming back to work, because they're promoting that, Microsoft's campus is opening and all of those things, right? Well, the one in Seattle. And everyone's going back to work, and now you have to interact with humans all day long. I mean, I'm at the office every day, you know, and if I didn't stay a kilometer away, I'd actually not come into the office. But I worry about senior management complaining, where is Al? like, where is Waldo? So I come physically into the office, and it is draining. And I think we have to get back to that sort of routine where this is how we interact with humans, and we still produce valuable information during the day in our jobs, right? So I think there's going to be a shift of how people adapt to the old new way of working, because it was old and then it became new, and now we're sort of merging the two. And the same could be said for how to pilot your way through technology. Yeah.
What a wonderful segue. It's like you planned that.
Do we keep the important news of the week for after the topic that we're talking about?
Let's do the news. It is
The
important
news.
news of the week after all.
I'm not sure if it's this week though, because we've been busy for 3 weeks. So this has come up in the last 2 weeks. I think for our viewers out there, this is not a podcast only show. So I don't think anyone listens to the audio, and it might be something that we do, Nick. So I could say to the listeners,
If you're in your car without the video, which is clever because, again, you don't die.
So there's 2 things I'd like to highlight. One is adaptive scopes for retention in Microsoft 365, because we're talking about compliance. It's quite neat now. You used to have static scopes, as in when you are configuring a retention policy, static scope would be a site in SharePoint, right? And these are the locations, because you could assign the locations. With adaptive scopes, I can now use labels. Those labels that we talk about attributes in AD attributes, labels in SharePoint, same, are they merged to the user profile service? And we can configure that, and then based on if a site is labeled with A5, apply an archive after 5 years retention label policy. I need to get the verbiage right. Retention label policy to it. So that's where adaptive scopes come in. You can have a condition, and if the condition's met, you can apply a retention label policy to it. Very, very cool.
I'm excited. You used words like attributes, and we're talking about retention without water. It's a gift. It's like you were on autopilot.
I am on autopilot when I talk about things that get me excited. The next thing, there's a new privacy management solution from Microsoft called, and I think, it's how they came up with ETV, right? If you watch one of those comedians, when they came up with a name for ETV, what do we call it, right? And then they went TV. And it's the same with Microsoft, where privacy management, let's just remove the C and the Y and call it PRIVA or PRIVA. I don't know how you enunciate certain things. And it's the new privacy management solution from Microsoft in the compliance center, where it's taken GDPR as a concept, data subjects, and a few other things, and it's gone, poop, let's give it back to business. So that's the hot stuff that's currently happening in the GRC space, GRC being governance, risk, and compliance for Microsoft currently. So PRIVA and adaptive scopes for retention policies for retention in Microsoft 365. And that's the news.
That was amazing. Thank you, Al. So today's topic
is the reason. Wait, Nick, must I put lines here for when you talk and when I talk in the show? So this is where I talk, and I introduce something to you, and then you tell me about it.
That's great. I'll wait for you to mention my name, and then I'll carry on.
So, Nick, I don't spend any time in the end user computing space or the device management space. That's not my role. And funnily enough, about a week and a half ago, Nick started talking about Windows 11 deployments. And I was like, why do we care, Nick? Why do we care? He said, because it's device management, it's endpoint management. And we do all of these things. We've got a team of people in the organization that worry about end user computing, specifically around device management. And I was like, and then I counted the heads in our organization that do this, and we have more than 2 people that actually spend all their days worrying about endpoint management. So naturally, AutoPilot became a thing. And I'm like, I've heard of ADOL and AutoPilot because I've got a few Surface devices, and you go into the Microsoft store in the US and you buy a Surface laptop and AutoPilot comes up. And I've seen AutoPilot on projects, but I've never really spent time in that. And when we speak to the team here, they're very excited about AutoPilot and a few other things. So naturally, I would want to know, well, how do I improve my and we've got a 4-letter acronym later. How do I improve my management, my posture inside of an organization when it comes to managing the endpoints? Because hybrid work is real, and we spoke about it earlier on. And people are now not physically coming into the office; they're sitting at home. So how do we do this when we've seen what happens with Windows 11 and all the device requirements? But it's not only limited to Windows 11. AutoPilot will work with other things. So Nick, can you tell the viewers out there a little bit about AutoPilot and why does it exist? And MEM is also there, right? And I'm going to hand over to Nick, and he'll explain to you what it's all about.
Thank you, Al. So I'd like to answer two questions. The one is, what is Windows Autopilot? And the other one is, what is MEM? And MEM is not a mispronunciation of mom, because that would be your mama, and she's not here right now, but we are. And both of them actually fit into another acronym, which is known as an SOE. And an SOE is a standard operating environment. And actually, why do we care? So we've got this technical side of things, and then the technical side of thing, actually, what we care about on the show, empowers what Alice is going to be talking to you about a little bit later, the compliance side of things. So
I am.
You are. Yeah. Have a look at the show notes. I'll keep on talking while you read. So what AutoPilot allows you to do in a nutshell is you receive a pretty new device as a new employee, and you get a device, and this is my iPad. But let's imagine it's a brand new Surface, and it's beautiful, and it's obviously the unboxing experience isn't what Apple is, but you open the lid and then you switch it on, and it auto provisions itself based on the corporate image and whatever apps that you've got. And the only thing that you've done is connected to the internet and typed in your username and your password. AutoPilot comes along, deploys a standard image, which we have defined up front, and that can be configured by the device manufacturer, or it can be configured by your IT department. So
device manufacturers, you started talking about Microsoft Surface and their devices. Is AutoPilot limited to just Microsoft devices?
It's a great question, Al, and the short answer is no. Any one of the standard, anyone who's large enough actually to have any type of a device ID as part of the manufacturing process. So this could be HP, Lenovo, Dell, anyone who's large enough, including Microsoft, who will give you a device ID either at the factory or something that you can harvest from your device and register with Azure Active Directory.
But so you're saying that there's these pre-baked images, and you could do entitlement management to logically group users that get certain apps deployed, right? Is that where you're going with this?
So I like what you said about apps. And effectively what we're doing, if you want to think about the old-fashioned days where we used to do these things called golden images, and you used to have that golden image that you blat onto your hardware, and then your hardware was standardized, right? And it would have all the device drivers and everything that you need. Or you give your device to someone else and it needs to be re-provisioned according to a standard. So think of imaging over the internet, and I don't have to be on my corporate network. I could be at home and AutoPilot will work over the internet.
So IBM Director and HP or the Compact Smart Start stuff, mainly IBM Director, right? A pre-baked image, push it across, or use System Center to do it. This is the
kind of. And the thing is that we talk about AutoPilot and MEM as if they are separate things, and actually they're not, because MEM is Microsoft Endpoint Manager, but it's not one product. It's a few products, which actually includes AutoPilot. It includes Intune. It includes SCCM. And a couple other things. And what you get with that is you get a way of standardizing an image either over the internet or via your corporate LAN. And yes, your device drivers are baked in for that specific piece of hardware. But then as soon as we go into the MEM side of things, I can use Intune or Endpoint Manager, which we used to know as SCCM, to standardize or manage the state of how I want that machine to be for the life cycle of that machine. And there's a particular reason why I might care about things like patches over the internet or patches on my corporate network, because it empowers a specific state that we want to be able to measure, doesn't it, Alistair? Because it's actually all about compliance.
Well, is that my segue to speak now? Am I allowed to speak?
Yes, that's why I asked you the question. So if
Do I
you
need
can,
to read things?
so along with retention comes glasses.
Right. Well, so water retention, right? So yes, Nick, thanks for introducing compliance into this conversation, because it does talk to non-compliant. Now, there's a couple of things, right? Is MEM a new product, a new offering?
No. So MEM
No.
is a bundling of things which
Okay.
we already know. So, like every couple of years, something that we know gets relabeled or gets rebundled together. And MEM here is a collection of technologies that empower what we care about on the show, which is compliance.
Look, I think you're cautiously optimistic saying every couple of years, right? These things happen every couple of months, right? So when we look at compliance and compliant, right? In the MEM world, or in the Intune world, we talk about device compliance. That doesn't talk to compliance.
Is that not the same thing? So if my
It's
device
not.
is compliant
It's
to
not.
something?
No. So when we look at the compliance center and what they talk, or how they ring fence compliance around insider risk management, information barriers, a compliance manager, right? A device can be marked as non-compliant because it hasn't got the latest version of Windows, or the patches are not updated. It's not running Windows Defender or whatever the approved apps are, right?
Yes.
That device is not compliant, and the device can become compliant so that it can be managed, right? And also it will define what sort of roles, and also then that would feed into the security side of things, right? If I deem a device that's enrolled but not compliant, right? So you go and you push with AutoPilot and MEM, an image, and then the user logs in, right? Or the user logs in, and then based on that, there's entitlement management coming in, and it says you've got access to these apps, right? Pushes apps with an image. Thank you very much for your time. But that user decides to go to a coffee shop in the Maldives and uses the coffee shop Wi-Fi. So that's a managed device that's seen as compliant within, talk about zero trust, single decision. The signals.
I trust the device and I trust the user, right?
Yeah. So now the signals are saying, from a location perspective, hey, I'm non-compliant. Right? So we give the user a different experience based on compliance standards that were defined in the compliance center.
So even though my device is compliant and patched, the user experience that the user will gain based on their location is due to the relative compliance status of the user, because they're coming from a different physical location.
Those are one of the parameters or permutations that you can actually go through when you build your governance, risk, and compliance framework, and what you need to adhere to as an organization based on the industry vertical that you're in, right? So think about pharmaceuticals, right? Pharmaceutical organizations, big pharma, they subscribe to GXP. You look at mining and manufacturing, they would subscribe to something like ISO or SHIRK, right? Different standard, different requirement. You look at power and petrochemical companies, highly regulated organizations would subscribe to NIST. And each of these, Microsoft's got a security benchmark for Azure that subscribes to CIS, and then they've also got a baseline protection component where MFA across multiple compliance standards, right?
Yes.
Conditional access. So you can flip the switches across so that you get a baseline across ISO, SANS, NIST, FINRA, FedRAMP, HIPAA if you are healthcare. But it's really about what is the user experience and how do you tailor that experience based on device compliance, signal compliance, platform compliance, right? So we're talking
I have
about
a question around that before you go
Yes.
because for me, this is just technology, right? So AutoPilot is a way to roll out an image. SCCM or Endpoint Manager is a way to maintain that image. AutoPilot, another way of maintaining that image and maybe using it to standardize and to force compliance of what would be a GPO, but over the internet, right? So for me, these are just technology building blocks that I can swap in and out. So where does a normal human being actually start in terms of this thinking? Where should they start?
Well, we had a guy on the show a couple of weeks ago that says everything starts with compliance, right? So you need to start on paper, on a whiteboard, and draw what compliance means to you as an organization. The tooling supports all your input parameters, right? So if you need to be NIST compliant, understand what NIST means to your organization and how do you apply compliance over your content stores, because it's really around what are you consuming when you're accessing the corporate network. Because the corporate network could be an M365 tenant or an Azure tenant, right? Or the Azure part of your tenant, I don't even know what to call it, your Azure subscription and your M365 tenant. So here's a perfect example. I've got a compliant device, right? Managed and all of those things, but I'm at a coffee shop in the Maldives, and I changed the user experience based on compliance policies that says I will apply information protection to a document that you want to consume because we don't trust your location. Coming back to zero trust. Right?
That makes sense.
Now, you can package all of these policies that you need to push down. So let's say you update a compliance policy and you've got 400 users that are not connecting to your corporate network, but sitting at a coffee shop in the Maldives because there's a big conference, and you roll out this compliance update. So what's nice about MEM, so you start with a device that you want to make compliant through AutoPilot, and naturally you now have device compliance. And then to roll that back and make sure that you have compliance, you can now update these things through MEM, right? So I log in, I have an internet connection, there's a new GPO compliance policy that goes, bloop. We don't trust where you're coming from, and we've just rolled out this new compliance policy. We're going to apply sensitivity labels to everything, right? As part of not only the image that you now have, but updates to that image, right? Because it's about the update stuff.
Yes, that makes sense.
And the big thing is, you need to start measuring what you manage now, because we now have a management framework that says AutoPilot to provision, right? And you can you retrofactorily do that? So I've got 400 devices. I can now AutoPilot existing devices and update existing devices as well as new devices.
Yes.
With MEM. Okay, so we're good there. And this is really about how do you ensure endpoint compliance inside of your organization. And what's nice about all of this is that you can start measuring compliance and compliant devices inside of your organization through, I think there's a MEM portal, right, around device compliance. Or
there actually are a few portals, including there's desktop analytics, there's co-management, and we've got this single pane of glass view that we can actually have inside of System Center that combines the Intune view and the Endpoint Manager or SCCM view. I'd like to try and summarize what you've said, Alistair. So we actually do three things, right? We don't start with technology. We start with compliance. Then
so here's that thing that I was talking about before you go there. This is the dashboard view of endpoint management, and you can actually have a look at the compliance status of devices inside of your organization. So naturally, it's an iterative process, and you become more compliant as you onboard more devices into AutoPilot.
Do you want to take us then through the summary of those three things?
No. You carry on. I just wanted to show that last thing, right?
Right. So then we'll start off with the beginning. So the beginning is you need a place to start, which is your compliance framework. And as you said, we need that place to start, right? Yeah. Then a tool is just a tool, is just a tool. A tool is not a process. So MEM and AutoPilot will fit into your compliance framework. They are not your compliance framework. And then there's reporting and ongoing management, which we can achieve using MEM and the various, bear in mind that MEM is a collection of technologies and the dashboards that are available inside that. Did I do that accurately?
You did wrap up nicely. So in closing, thank you very much for the closing, Nick. Our buzzword, our TLA buzzword, or 4-letter acronym, not 3-letter acronym, buzzword bingo for the week. Do you want to read it?
Cloud security, posture management. And even though we've spoken about retention and spectacles were on display earlier today, this has got nothing to do with that kind of posture, does it, Alistair?
No, it's not your posture, right?
Not that posture.
But it is about your security posture. Microsoft has been talking about security posture and security posture management for some time now. And then the rest of the world, all the vendors are now calling it CSPM. And it's really security posture management is to identify any sort of misconfiguration issues you might have inside of your organization when it comes to being compliant and the remediation tasks associated with that in order to patch that. Now, a CSPM is great, but like Nick said, and why the show is important, start at the beginning, start at the device and move that way. If you configure your framework here, your GRC framework, enrolling devices of any size, even these things, right? Boom.
Yes.
Focus, yeah, it will all be compliant. And if you approach it from that perspective, get your device compliance done and your user compliance will follow because of policies, you are winning.
So I can use MEM to manage my posture. Is that right?
Well, yes, because it's an accumulate. Well, okay, it's one of the tools in your toolbox to improve your cloud security posture. CSP, another CSP. All right. Well, is that it, Nick? Can we wrap up? We're 2 or 3 minutes over our normal allotted time.
I think we can let everybody go. Well done to everyone who stayed this long. If you hang around long enough, we'll give you a T-shirt.
Do we talk longer when it's just the two of us? Because when we have a guest, we usually finish at 25 minutes, right? And that's allowing even more airtime for another human. So when we two talk, and we apologize for not having a guest on the show this week. Why don't we have a guest, Nick? Was it a non-disclosure thing, right? Because one of our guests also said they can't be associated with the Nick and Al show because we're not serious enough, right?
This is true.
We're not serious enough, and that person knows who that person is, right?
And they're watching right now as we speak.
Anyhow, to wrap up, I'm very excited to have you here. Thank you very much for spending another 28 minutes with us on a Friday afternoon at 12 to listen to Nick and Al, and hopefully next week we'll have a guest on to talk about more things, not just Nick and Al. And we hope you learned a little bit about AutoPilot and MEM. If you like the show, follow us on Twitter. You can find me at Alistair Pugin.
I needed some time to practice. I am at Nicholas Blank.
I've got that hand gesture right. So if you come across, right, from the left to right, straight there. This is winning. We're getting very professional.
Coming up to 29 minutes.
Yes, you can find us on the interwebs at Alistair Pugin, at Nicholas Blank. Stick around. We'll be back at 12 p.m. next Friday. Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye.